And we're live. What's up, guys? Welcome to the very first episode of the ALLSMITH project. Today's guest is the founder and CEO of Ice Barrel, which is an awesome tool for cold therapy that offers an easy way to add ice baths into your daily life. Today, I'd like to welcome Wyatt Ewing. What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing? I'm stoked to be here today.
Wyatt, I'm pumped to chat with you. Ice barrels seem to be the talk of the town. Cold therapy seems to be the secret sauce in the lifestyle and the routines and habits of many, many high performers. So I'm excited to unpack not just your story, but all the secret protocols and the weapons behind cold therapy. So thanks for joining me and kicking off the ALLSMITH project with me today, man.
Yeah, I'm excited. We can dive in and get into the nitty gritty.
Absolutely, man. We crossed paths a little bit at the games, just kind of in passing. And before I get into all this stuff with Ice Barrel and cold therapy and whatnot, you're a little hustler, man. Like, your work ethic really grabbed my attention from the onset of me meeting you. Where does that come from? Like, where does this hustle and this just nitty gritty boots on the ground mindset and action come from?
It's a good question. Man, I feel like it was just instilled in me at a super young age. Growing up was pretty survivalist, and I had to get really scrappy just to make it in this big world. And so ever since I was young, I was consistently working since the age of 9 in some facet. I got my first traditional job on a ranch where they were breeding stallions for racing, and there was about 48 horses that I had to tend to, and these horses were like super high testosterone, extremely aggressive, and I had to feed them, and it was awful. But that was like 9 years old, did that 5 a.m. before school started, and then in the evenings. But man, that's kind of where it started, just like constantly grinding it out and just surviving.
Totally, man. Do you have any siblings, or what was the protocol kind of introducing you into that lifestyle?
Yeah, so 1999, my dad was in a really bad car accident, and it left him like 60% brain dead. Oh, wow. And so my brother and I, even though we were super young, we just had to help take care of my mom, and we had 3 sisters. So we just went from a good, steady family just to the bottom of the barrel. And it was clawing my way out of it over that first 18 years of life. And it was brutal. But again, I mean, I learned a good work ethic. I learned resilience. One of my just core beliefs and values that I live by is this idea of just as long as you keep moving, you can't lose. As long as you keep engaging in the game, you cannot lose. You just got to keep going. So just one foot in front of the next. The path doesn't have to be clear. You just have to keep the body, the mind, and the emotions in motion in order to win. So that's what I did. No matter how hard it get, I just kept going forward.
Yeah, totally. It's definitely along the concept of objects in motion stay in motion. And even when you can't see light at the end of the tunnel, you can see your feet. And that allows you to put one foot then in front of the other. And how were you able to grieve that at 9 years old? You know, your dad being in this car accident, you have to go from a boy to a man very fast. What was that process like, just as far as the human component, when you take away all the other intangibles associated with life?
Yeah, I definitely early on in life just disassociated from the reality around me and just very much went into a survival state. And I don't think I necessarily grieved it and or faced it until later in life, where I could kind of take a step back, take a breath, and realize I'm not in an unsafe environment anymore, so I can face those emotions and realities around me. So it took me a little while, and I do attribute cold therapy in that healing journey, because one thing that was challenging for me was getting present in the moment to actually face myself. And a lot of, like, I would say soul work and or emotional work is best done when we're in the present moment, when we're not ruminating about the future or reliving the past, but when we can stay in the present moment. And so cold therapy helped me tremendously, just to get present in the moment and build up the courage I needed to face who I was and where I came from.
Totally, man. It's so interesting you say that, because my very first introduction to cold therapy was as I kind of concluded from my lenses, my athletic career of high-level basketball, professional basketball overseas, and then a CrossFit Games athlete for a little while. And in 2018, not only did I lose my father to brain cancer, but also I tore my ulnar collateral ligament, my brachioradialis in my left elbow. And I didn't really understand how to navigate the next facet of life. It was very much like self-reliance is everything. I can figure it out. If I just put in more hours and more work, I'm going to be able to figure out the next phase. And that worked until my body started to shut down. And I ended up spending some time with the XPT community, and I was hanging out with Laird Hamilton, and we were doing some stuff in his pool with dumbbells and all kinds of like breath and exposure therapy, which I'm not very water competent. So I just surrendered to the process of like, hey, what I'm doing isn't working. I need to try something new. And then at the conclusion of the pool therapy, we did a 15-minute sauna, and that was the first time he threw me into the cold tub. And exactly what you said, it was the first time where I couldn't run, I couldn't do, I had to be. I had to focus on the breath. I had to self-reflect on the choices that I had made up until that point. I couldn't deflect or bury or blame. It was a very humble moment where it was me against me. And just being present in that moment, and then how I felt after that with the norepinephrine dump, the dopamine, and realizing that I'd done something hard was my first introduction. I was like, wow, there is absolute magic with cold therapy. Not only do I want to do it, but I want to talk about it to anybody that will listen. And I want to connect with people that are on a very similar path, because those that do it, that come from a level of pain, really understand that, wow, this is a game changer. If you could put this sensation into pill form, it would be not able to be kept on shelves because it would be sold so fast.
Yeah, very true. It's interesting how I would say the awareness of cold therapy and the health benefits has grown over the last, I would say since like 2018. I remember early on when I had decided to take the practice that I was doing, and with this idea and motivation of wanting to share it with the world, I was telling everyone I knew about the power of cold therapy, and nobody got it. Nobody understood it. Fast forward to today, I don't think you can go on social media without seeing somebody in an ice bath.
Totally. What was your journey to kind of finding it? What was your life? You know, I know you were working a high-level job. You're burning the candle at both ends, trying to figure out, family, lifestyle, business. What was going on in your life, and how did that ultimately lead you to finding cold therapy and then wanting to create a business around it?
Yeah, so at that stage in my life, I was married. I had a kid. Still have kids. I have 3 kids now, but we had a young daughter, and I was stressed out, but really what I was anxious. I had like really, really bad anxiety, but I just blanketed it as I'm stressed. I was working a career in corporate aviation, helping people buy and sell airplanes. And that job, by the way, you just work 24 hours. Like, you're up dealing with customers in Saudi Arabia and Asia in the middle of the night. And then the next morning you're dealing with US based customers. So you're just always working and sleeping and tending to life in between. So it was just, I was very out of balance, off kilter. And I was also in this cycle where I would just get sick, like every 3 months, just get sick constantly. And I'd be sick for like 2 weeks. And it was just an awful cycle that I was in. And I had tried a lot of different modalities to soothe and relieve stress, anxiety, like meditation, exercise, supplements, diet, things like that. But nothing was quantifiable or working for me. And it wasn't just like I wouldn't just put my toe in the water with these other practices. Like I truly implemented them into my life. There are times I was meditating for up to 2 hours, and I got good at the practice, but it wasn't like relieving me when I wouldn't be meditating. You know, there wasn't any of that support when I wasn't practicing it actively. So I was at a really low point in life, and went to the gym to work out, and this guy came up to me, told me how unwell I looked, and encouraged me to take a cold shower. And he's like, don't even work out today. Just go home and take a cold shower. So that's what I did. I literally just left the gym, went home, got in a cold shower. It was absolutely awful and uncomfortable, but I forced myself to stay in for, I think it was like 2 or 3 minutes in a freezing cold shower. And when I got out of the shower, I always say, I felt like I was where my feet were. And for like the first time in a really, really long time, it was that moment of like, I'm here right now and I'm okay. And that feeling of presence became something I was like chasing. So I did multiple cold showers a day for a long period of time. Then I did the whole thing that everybody does, and it's part of the journey, so it's great. But I went to the family bathtub and then to whatever receptacle I could fill with water and add ice to. And it became so impactful for me. I just wanted to share the experience with everybody. I was kind of like that annoying guy in Denver, Colorado, telling everyone, hey, you should take an ice bath for that. Like, hey, an ice bath will help that. And I got to the point where I wanted to bring the power of cold to everybody everywhere and just share this experience. But there weren't any great ways to practice cold therapy other than like the cold shower. And there were a lot of issues with the bathtub and draining and conserving water and cooling and all that. So I just sought out to tackle it. And I literally called my wife on the phone while I was sitting in Centennial Airport working in the aviation space, and told her, I'm done, I'm quitting. And I just walked away. Then I came home and I was like, I got to figure out how to bring cold therapy to the masses. And it was not an easy journey. Nothing fell into place. I just had to keep kicking down every door. And if I couldn't get through the door, I'd go through a window.
Totally. Man, it's so cool to hear your passion associated with trying to bring something to the market that had so much tremendous benefit for you during a very challenging time in your life. And, you know, I echo this often, but that is, pain seems to be really the only thing that gets most people to truly change. And the subtle benefits that you experience from the cold shower, and you realizing that this is giving you eternal presence, enhancing your mood, allowing you to think more clearly. It's a great reminder of like, this is what it feels like to be alive and not be stuck in the fucking rat race, just trying to pursue the next dollar, the next deal, the next thing that gives us a temporary form of dopamine, but doesn't really have elongated effects, which seems to be what we see in the form of Western medicine of, hey, you can do therapy, you can do different forms of maybe sports psychology or different forms of talk therapy. You can do medication as well, and they all help a little bit, but they don't have like the long-lasting effects without the risk. And that's the thing that I really love also about cold therapy is that there's minimal risk. It's challenging. You're overcoming a fear, but you also get the pat on the back of, I just did something hard, and it's enhancing my confidence as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a push towards the practices that we've lost that make us feel human and feel alive would be a great thing for Western society as a whole. I mean, hot water is a relatively new invention, but getting outside in nature, going barefoot, looking at the sun, right? Those basic things that make us human and feel good and alive, we've kind of lost those in our pursuit of comfort. And some form of sustainability. So yeah, it's interesting. I like cold therapy because it's extremely quantifiable. You get in there, it's sensational, you feel it, you experience it, and then you get out and you feel good. I've never seen anybody get out of an ice bath without a smile on their face or a grin or a smirk. It's always some kind of like positive emotion on the back end of it. I don't know anything else that does that.
And I'll echo that and share that every time I've decided or negotiated myself out of not doing the ice bath, I regret it. Every time I've overcome my fear, I've never regretted it. And I've had a better day, or I feel better, or it helps with pain management or management of anxiety. And I mean, when we just completely strip it to the core and its bare bones and remove even all the scientific jargon, it feels good. Not necessarily in the moment, but post the exposure therapy, you're on a whole new level. You're 10xing productivity, your connection with others, your stress management, and it definitely reminds us to be present and have gratitude. And like you said, there's not many other things on the planet. And kind of quoting the famous Wim Hof here, he's talked about there being a 540% increase in noradrenaline upon the use of this, a 250 to 300% increase in dopamine. And that directly improves your mental health. And when we're looking to try to manage things like psychosis, fear, anxiety, depression, or bipolar disorder, this is the one thing that allows us to tackle those problems without the use of drugs. And it's something to me that's like, this needs to be talked about at the very least. And you and I are probably pretty biased that like, hey, it's the answer to the world's problems. But it's definitely something that needs to float to the surface, because if people are willing to at least try it, then it's something that can tremendously add benefit right now, right away. And it's not something you have to do for hours each day. It can be a 2 to 3 minute daily practice that can immediately have a positive effect.
Yeah, the barrier to entry is extremely low. I always say the best starting place is your shower. Go get in there, turn the water cold. Yep. You don't even have to turn it all the way cold. You can just start with a warm temperature and let your body acclimate and build up a tolerance. And then when you're ready, like, do what everybody does and fill that family bathtub up with some ice and jump in it and get the experience. And as you're ready to elevate the practice, there are great products and resources on the market. You can even go to certain local gyms now and try the plunge there. So there's just a lot of great opportunities just to get started.
Yeah, for sure. Dude, you mentioned it briefly, but the protocol to get started is so fun. It's like you start with the shower thing and you're like, do I face the shower? Do I turn away? Like, what's the breathing protocol? How cold? How long? And then from there, you typically graduate to some sort of like Home Depot plastic horse trough or the metal horse trough. And you recruit a bunch of buddies because you want to tell anybody and everybody about it. And everybody brings over a couple bags of ice, and like we do the whole thing of like, trying to get ourselves like ready to go to get in. And, you don't want to look like the soft one amongst your friends. So like you stay in longer. And I know in the beginning, my friends and I picked like a song. And it's like, oh, you got to stay in for the entirety of the song. And it was like a really cool community event that it turned into, that all of us started feeling really good in the midst of integrating this practice. And then from there, it was like, man, we don't really want to buy the ice all the time. Let's do the freezer thing, and let's do Flex Seal in the cracks, and let's try our best to integrate a little bit of ice, but also set the temperature on the freezer. And then all of these evolutions continue to take place, and then ultimately, people get to the end of that journey, and they're like, I see the benefit of this product. I want to use it almost every day. And so as a byproduct, I'm simply going to either upgrade to an ice barrel or a plunge or one of the other products that are kind of on the market now.
Yeah, that's exactly how it goes. Yeah, it's pretty wild. We found that a lot of people in their practice along the way, they find themselves not liking this counterintuitive position of lying down in cold water. When you lie on your back, that's a rested position, right? But the body is going into a fight or flight response. Nowhere in nature do you see a creature go into the fight or flight response and then lie on their back. right? It's like, doesn't even make sense. If you look at every creature in the fight or flight response, their chest is up, they're upright, they're engaged. And so we really dove into this idea of, or in the early innovation of Ice Barrel, is how can we support the body's natural position in an uncomfortable environment during that fight or flight response. And so the barrel position keeps the shoulders up, the breath engaged, makes concentration easier, and it really puts you in the most comfortable position in an uncomfortable environment. Especially as you go into duration and you're starting to take longer and longer ice baths at colder and colder temperatures, it's nice to make sure that you're in a more controlled position.
That's a really great observation. Now it makes sense why the ice barrel is cylindrical and upright that way, which is very cool. And it's funny you mentioned that because I feel like all of us have a little bit of a negotiation strategy of like, man, I don't want to get in today. I'm going to skip it today, or I'm just going to get in for, 10 breaths, or I'm going to get in for this duration. There's always this self-talk that takes place. And then ultimately when you do the thing, which you need to do the thing. You can't think about the thing. You can't talk about the thing. You can't sub-maximally do it. You need to do the thing to elicit the benefit. Inevitably, you're like, okay, like I see the ROI here, and I want that return, and I want it consistently. So I'm going to submerge myself and ultimately play. And it's just an interesting protocol when you look at the self-talk. Do you guys over at Ice Barrel, I've heard you say get cold and try to keep it as simple as possible. But do you guys have any self-talk strategies that you share with those that are practicing cold therapy that enable them to have a little bit of an easier time integrating the practice in the beginning?
Yeah, I'm actually going to plug our new app here. So on October 22nd, we are launching the Ice Barrel app that we built natively from the ground up. And part of that experience is a whole coaching program depending on why you're practicing cold therapy. So you select the reason you're taking ice baths, and then you get a bunch of coaching protocols that walk you through setting intention, breathing, and when you're actually in the ice bath. It's really fascinating. One thing we lean into, though, is the experience for most people should be, I'll use the word gentle. I've seen thousands and thousands of people take ice baths, and the people that are most surrendered to the experience, and they're not judging and hating the cold and the ice, but they're just accepting it for what it is without the idea of cold, bad, hot, good, they usually do the best in the barrel and in their ice bath. As soon as we get into this idea of once some people get in, they start yelling and screaming, and then it's like this high energy experience. They're usually out within 30 to 45 seconds. Whereas the ones that get in and they take that deep breath and they just allow the cold to wash over them, generally have much longer duration and a much more positive experience. So when you're making those negotiations with yourself, we always just encourage people to listen to your body. There's no reason to push it, right? We're not trying to compete in this. We're just trying to gain the therapeutic benefits, and set an intention before you get in that you can come back to anytime it feels uncomfortable or the idea of I want to get out of here right now takes over. You just come back to that original breath and that original intention to reset.
That's really good advice. I definitely align with that. And something that really tracks and resonates is setting the mind in intention, which then brings you back to truly connect with your hormonal system. And a couple pieces of advice that I've really appreciated, and I've heard the Ice Barrel Director of Performance, Don Fletcher, say this a few times, which is really trying your best to nasal breathe. I've seen that have great benefits. Really trying your best to elongate the exhale and not really trap your breath and hold it in. And then exploring different forms, which I've heard you talk about before, of box breathing. And typically a great starting point for a lot of people is that 4-second inhale, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale, and then 4-second hold. And tinkering with different forms and facets of the breathing ratio to then allow the nervous system to calm a little bit. Because I've heard you talk about it, Wyatt, which is right when you get in, it's that fight or flight response. Your body's freaking out. It's incredibly cold. I want to get out of this thing. You learn to surrender, which I really love that term, and I think it's a great experiential description of what happens inside of the cold plunge. And then from that level of surrender, you move yourself kind of more into that form of rest and recover or rest and digest. And I think that's such a great thing to explore because all of us feel like we have to have the on switch all the time. And I think being able to shift that switch between that fight or flight and that rest and digest is a very important facet. So that way we can operate at different frequencies and not feel like we need to be in high intensity or that 100 miles per hour all the time.
I completely agree. It's a great way to reset the default setting so you can understand the difference between fight or flight and rest and digest, right? Sometimes in our fast-paced life here in the West, we have a hard time going from one to the next. Like, we're going to bed with our phone in our face and we're staying in this like high beta, right, brain waves. Whereas if you can practice cold therapy and you can understand how it switches the body from one to the next, super helpful.
Yeah, totally. There's something that comes to mind when I think of cold therapy, and that is the magic you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding. And that's something that I think is really powerful because it's really easy to avoid doing the hard thing. But typically on the other side of an anxiety type experience or on the other side of a workout or blood, sweat, and tears or the uncomfortable conversation, it unlocks the magic that you're trying to seek in your life. And at the end of your life, you're going to self-reflect and be like, oh, here were the roadblocks that I needed to overcome. And once I developed the courage and the wherewithal to partake and surrender to that experience, I got to the other side and it was everything that I wanted it to be. And the ice bath is such a great metaphorical analogy for that experience.
100%. I love that. We talk about that on our team quite often, although we use a different analogy. We say the treasure you seek most in life is in the cave you least want to go into. So this idea of like storming the dark cave is where you find the treasure. So yeah, I completely agree with that statement for sure.
I might need to write that down. Storming the dark cave might need to be your title of the episode, man.
There you go. I love it. Just get in there and do the work. Whenever there's an uncomfortable environment and I'm aware that this is going to suck, that's when I'm most likely to move the fastest in life.
I love that, man. When you look at the business side of Ice Barrel, how did you ultimately figure out where to start, where to get funding, where to establish the protocols to create this product that now has such a wide range of benefits, but also you're trying your best to make it in the U.S. You and I chatted about that briefly, and you're trying your best to create jobs, create opportunities for other people, and then share this cold therapy thing, which when you started this didn't have tremendous buy-in. And so when you pause and you self-reflect, where was that starting point? Because as you and I both know, and we've talked about offline before, it's a mystery looking forward, but it's science looking back. And I'm just really curious, when you were at that phase where you're just sick and tired of working in the aviation space and trying to do things that were not fulfilling to your heart and didn't light your heart on fire, you made that tough decision. What was your wife's reaction? And then where did you start?
Yeah, I love this question. My wife has always been extremely supportive of me. So she was right there in the trenches with me, which I am eternally grateful for her love and support. Without her, none of this would have been possible. She was just incredible. She probably knows this business better than I do, although she doesn't work in the business. But she's seen everything along the way. And then where did I start? At the beginning, I am a very methodical, data-oriented person. So I literally started the LLC, got the EIN number. I just checked all the boxes of what it takes to start a business. And then once all of the foundation and structure was in place, One thing that I think is extremely important is just like we as humans have our core beliefs and core values, you need to develop those core beliefs and core values for your company, for your brand, that you then make decisions based on those values, not based on what you think feels good, looks good, or is right. So that becomes a sounding board for the business. And that keeps you, I would say, like on that straight and narrow path. It's so easy to get distracted. It's so easy to try and take shortcuts. But when you have those core values and the vision and the mission are clear, then you don't take shortcuts. You do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And I could go into so many different examples of where we took the hard path. We did the hard thing. We did the expensive thing because it was the right thing to do, not because it was the fastest, cheapest, most efficient. So I think getting your foundation set is most important. And that had actually allowed us to bootstrap this company, manufacturing in the US, and successfully employing a US workforce. Yeah, I'm really proud of how we have grown Ice Barrel. I do not believe in throwing money at problems, especially good money at bad problems. You have to become a better problem solver, and you have to become the most efficient operator possible. You don't buy your way out of anything.
Man, those are some really powerful words. I like hearing it from the horse's mouth himself, because starting off, man, it's really easy to give in to the temptation. I mean, we see it a lot in the cold therapy space with people trying their best to, have some of these like paddleboard style technology and the different forms of like chillers and filters and things that seem really sexy to the eye, but then they're breaking really fast. And you're seeing the reviews on Amazon and the different places that are being sold on like Facebook Marketplace and things like that. It's cheap. It got to the marketplace fast, but it doesn't have long-term sustainability. And so hearing you say, do the next right thing, strive to problem solve, and also like how rare is it to have a U.S. workforce in this day and age where everything's coming from overseas, where there's cheaper labor, you can probably get higher margins starting off, but you were like, no, we want to employ the people in our country. That's a really cool thing, man. Like starting off, was that part of your thought process of like, hey, we want to keep everything in the U.S. if we need to travel there and have those hard conversations to make sure the product comes out the way we want it to. We want to do that. And then what is the Ice Barrel made of? What does it look like from the onset of getting all the materials to the development of when it gets shipped and delivered to the consumer?
Yeah, so 100%. The idea from the beginning is I want a U.S. workforce, and I want to manufacture everything in the U.S. I am very, very passionate about that. We ship very valuable jobs overseas that we could do here in the U.S. So being able to do that here has just tremendously helped. I mean, it's such an honor to go to a manufacturing plant and see the lives that we positively have impacted through hiring people to support the growth of the company, and to see that it's like there are 75 people that are involved to some degree, whether it's manufacturing, marketing, shipping and delivery, 75 people for every Ice Barrel. Like that's incredible, along the entire like supply chain through fulfillment. And we've been able to like add meaning and value to each one of those people's lives, which is huge. In regard to the material, this is super interesting in my opinion. It's something I wrestled with the most. I am very, very cognizant about how I and my family consume, whether that's food, material, technology, waste, whatever it may be. I'm very cognizant of how we consume. And I hate the idea that there are so many things that are just made out of plastic and then discarded so quickly. So I wanted to integrate sustainability into Ice Barrel. So initially I was looking for products and materials outside of plastics. But then I realized when I was really contemplating this, like we have landfills full of plastic. Like it's going to be there forever. what can we do about that? How can we make that sustainable? How can we right our wrong by manufacturing and dumping so many plastics? So our ice barrels are made out of recycled materials. The black ice barrel is made out of 100% recycled material. A lot of people don't know this. It's actually more expensive to use a recycled dry good than it is to use a virgin dry good, because it has to go through an additional sanitation and regrinding phase. So it takes longer to get a recycled material than it does a virgin material. But again, like doing the right thing, we could go make ice barrels out of a virgin material and just add to the problem, or we could be sustainable and good stewards of this earth that we're on and pull those materials out of landfills, out of the ocean, out of these manufacturing facilities and repurpose them. We put a lifetime warranty on our product. We didn't have to do that. We could have done a 1 year or a 5 year, but we put a lifetime warranty. And so when you're done with your ice barrel, you can go recycle it again. You can send it back to us and we'll turn it into another ice barrel. So we're really proud of the work that we've done around the sustainability features in our product.
That's very cool, man. I love to hear that, you're very conscious of more than just the ice barrel experience, but the environmental experience and understanding who you're impacting along the way and realizing that it does take a village. It does take a process. And 75 people, I know you mentioned that to me when we were briefly chit-chatting in Kauai, and I remember being jaw-dropped, like just self-reflecting, man, like what a cool experience and thought exercise it is to realize that like this idea that you had is now positively impacting so many people and helping put food on their table and, create lives for their kids and their families. And that's something that's really special. When you self-reflect on that, aside from it pulling the corners of your mouth out by your ears a little bit, is that something that elicits a little bit of pressure for you as a founder and a CEO, knowing that like you're responsible for employing quite a few people?
Oh, yeah, 100%. For the longest time, it kept me up at night. I think a lot of founders have this feeling that the rug is going to get pulled out from under them any moment, and that it's all going to just disappear. That's not based in reality or data, but I think it's almost. I think it can almost be healthy. For the longest time, and still in some areas of the business, I almost operated out of a state of like paranoia. And I think there's some strengths in that. You have to learn again to manage like your perceptions and your realities and make sure you're staying in a mindful, present state. But for sure, I mean, I take everything I do very seriously. I'm extremely calculated. I have a big team that leans on me and the brand. So I take it extremely serious.
Yeah, totally, man. I think that's really honorable for you to do. And, anytime you're carrying the load of a business and the livelihood of others, it's the hero's journey. And the hero's journey can sometimes come with a little bit of pain, but it sounds like your risk tolerance is pretty strong. And I guess my next question for you, Wyatt, is how did you transition from the original iteration where it was a little bit of a taller ice barrel that required a step and was a little bit challenging to get in and out, but allowed for a bigger human like myself to like fully submerge and be pretty comfortable, to this newer iteration that's a little bit lower, a little bit wider, and seems to be the next phase to lower the barrier to entry for people to use the product more consistently?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I'll try and answer it quickly. Otherwise, I could talk to you about this for like an hour. In early 2018, 19, 20, the majority of people that were practicing cold therapy were what we call like the weekend warrior. They didn't have any accessibility issue getting in and out of the ice barrel. They were competitive athletes in very good shape. Those were the people that were demanding the product, what we call the Ice Barrel 400. That's the traditional barrel that you have all seen. As the cold therapy community started growing, we started introducing different demographics, different sizes and types of bodies, different types of athletes, and And one thing that we saw was a need for something that was more accessible. As we started looking into that, I started seeing there are certain demographics that are underserved in sports in general, but also in the cold therapy community. So I specifically wanted to create a product that you and I could use as like the weekend warriors, but I wanted also to serve our adaptive athletes. I wanted to serve our athletes that might have some form of a disability and they need that ease of entry. I also wanted to support our elderly community. Again, I felt like it was very underserved. We noticed throughout 2021 there was a significant increase in our sales to an age group over 55 years old, and that was right around the time we started developing this product, and we wanted to make it easier for our elderly community to partake in this practice. We also saw an increase in our female demographic pickup as well. So our innovation is extremely thoughtful, and all of our innovation is designed for the human body and experience. And all of our bodies are different, and all of our needs are different. And so as we continue to innovate in the cold therapy space, we've taken a lot of that into consideration. And I'm extremely proud of some of our newer products that will be coming out early 2021. Plus our app. Definitely want to download the app on October 22nd.
Nice, man. Oh, that's right around the corner. Congratulations on that, man.
Thank you.
When you look at cleanliness, right, that's definitely a factor when you look at cold therapy and the usage of recycling people through, whether that's at events or that's at gym usage. What have you guys kind of integrated to elicit sanitation of the product and try to ensure that, you know, there's not a bunch of grime and things getting accumulated within the plastic of the ice barrel?
Yeah, again, another great question. So the way that we think about quote unquote filtration is there's really two parts. You have the actual filtration, but you also have sanitation. You can filter dirty water all day long. And just because you filter something doesn't make it sanitary. So we felt it was most important to start with sanitation over filtration. And so that's what we did. We developed a great water stabilizer that's non-toxic, made from copper silver ions, that's going to condition, treat, and stabilize the water. So that's a very popular product here at Ice Barrel. It's like insanely popular, actually. It's used in a lot of other applications as well, which is really cool. And as we look forward into the future, many of you already know we have built what I consider like the Tesla of water chillers. And that's going to get released in just a few short months. And with that product, we've also tackled the filtration in there. So you'll be able to use our water stabilizer with our filtration unit, which is also the cooling unit. And that will keep your water clean for a very, very, very long time.
I love it, man. It's so cool that you guys have really taken your time to integrate some of these products and really, like you said, not necessarily do it the easy way, but find the right way so that way it has long-term benefits and synergizes well with the origination of the product and doesn't have people losing jobs or anything like that. Where I want to take the conversation next is really trying to dive into the science a little bit. We talked a lot about the feeling. We talked a lot about our personal stories in relation to the product. And then we talked about product development and the story ideation as to where it came from. But where I want to go next, Wyatt, is better understanding the science for people so they can understand, like, what is noradrenaline? What is dopamine? And how are those things impacted by exposure to cold therapy?
Yeah, so when it comes to the benefits of cold therapy, I generally like to keep it super simple for everyone to understand, but we can dive in as deep as you would like. But your body has a nervous system, and cold therapy is a workout for the nervous system. Just like we work out our bodies and we work out our minds, we want to work out our nervous system. The short-term benefits of cold therapy is generally a boost in mood and energy levels, as well as reducing inflammation and pain. As you continue to practice cold therapy, over time, you're going to reduce symptoms of anxiety, lower cortisol levels, and even help stave off cognitive decline. Your body has what's called the vagus nerve, which is a branch of a lot of nerves. It's the base of it is right up here at the back of your neck. That's why we always encourage people, in order to stimulate the vagus nerve through cold therapy, you need to dip down to the base of your neck, which is very easy to do in an ice barrel. It's a little bit more challenging to do in a bathtub because you got to like slide your body all the way down and get your head under. But once you stimulate the vagus nerve, that's what controls the autonomic nervous system. That's what we would consider the parts of the body that you don't consciously control. So like you don't tell or think about your heart to beat, it just beats, right? The part of the autonomic nervous system that you can control would be your breath, right? You can breathe voluntarily or involuntarily. Your body will just help you breathe for you. So as you're practicing cold therapy, you're stimulating and activating these parts of the body. One thing that's super unique is how cold therapy affects your hormones. So a little bit of context here. We did a study a couple months ago. I was part of the study along with 40 other people where we drew our blood, and it was draw your blood 15 minutes before you take an ice bath. Then we would get in an ice bath. We all stayed in for 3 minutes at 42 degrees. Then you get out of the ice bath, and 30 minutes later, you get your blood drawn again. What was crazy about that, the results from it, is my norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine. They all, when you're in a homeostasis, depending on the person, they range between 200 and 400%. All of those numbers were well over 1,000%. So those getting released in the body is releasing incredible endorphins in the body, which is the feel-good hormones. So take a 3-minute ice bath at 42 degrees. You're guaranteeing the rest of your day, you're going to naturally lean into happier emotions. You'll feel more motivated because those hormones in the body are sitting at higher states for long periods of time, which is extremely fascinating. So we have some really unique science that we've done and different tests that we've done. And we're still like collecting all the data and compiling it. But there's a lot of great research out there. And also, I mean, a lot of us are familiar. There's like Huberman Labs and a lot of people that have, Dr. Rhonda Patrick's, have talked about the benefits of cold therapy and constantly expanding the science there. It's super fascinating. But again, it's so great for balancing, stabilizing, and activating the hormones in the body as well.
Yeah, that study sounds incredibly fascinating. I mean, it makes sense for those of you listening that have experienced the feeling and the sensation after cold therapy. How long would you say those positive benefits of elevation in both dopamine and norepinephrine stay within the body after performing an ice bath? Is it 6 to 8 hours after? Is it 5 hours? Or is it case dependent on the individual?
I would say probably the latter, although it depends on what further stress you put on the body throughout the rest of your day. So if you're going to, let's say you're taking a quote unquote rest day, right? And you take an ice bath in the morning like that, you're going to have those good feelings for like 6 to 12 hours. If you're going from that ice bath in the morning and then you're going to go work out, or you're going to go sauna later in the day, those numbers are going to decline and go up and decline. They're going to completely change because you're introducing new stressors onto the system. As humans, our body is extremely resilient and adaptable, and we're very quick to adapt in different environments. So it depends on, I guess, what environment you put yourself in throughout the rest of your day. If you have a very stressful job, your cortisol levels after your ice bath are going to come down exponentially. But if you go into a stressful environment, they're going to start rising again, which is going to offset your dopamine and your norepinephrine. So It really depends on the environment that you're in.
For sure. When we look at pain management, I think traditional thought processes are around, hey, I hurt my wrist, I'm going to put an ice pack on it. But that's more of like looking at it from like a localized standpoint. But you and I both know pain is typically systemic. It's a full body issue. And typically exposure to cold, you're getting the pressure that's kind of affecting the system. So it's affecting not just at a skin level, but also penetrating a little bit deeper. Will you touch a little bit on how cold therapy impacts pain management from a full body experience rather than just solely a localized impact?
For sure. I could go a lot of different directions here. I think probably what would be most beneficial is understanding that a majority of pain in the body stems from oxygen deprivation in the body, which is a result of a lack of blood flow. And so cold therapy increases circulation through vasoconstriction, which is where you put your body in cold water, your veins constrict, and then when you get out, they open back up. And if you're doing contrast therapy, going from cold to hot, you're going to go into the ice barrel and your veins are going to get tight. Then you're going to go in the sauna and they're going to dilate and get really big. And then you're going to do that back and forth, and that helps tremendously with circulation. As your body starts circulating more blood, it starts providing more oxygen to chronic or systemic injury sites on the body. And where there's adequate oxygen, there is a reduction of pain. So it's going to help move blood through the body in a huge way. With that being said, a majority of pain outside of trauma, physical like impact trauma, is real in the body, but generates first in the brain. The brain is the one saying, hey, this hurts, right? It's not your knee that is saying this hurts. It's your brain noticing an injury, telling you, hey, this is uncomfortable. This isn't working. And so when you are in a present state of mind, you can manage and deal with pain way better than if you're I'm in a painful state and you're projecting in the future and anxiety comes in, right? You just can't manage pain well. You can't manage your thoughts well. And we've seen it time and time again. I got a really interesting story for you, but we've seen it time and time again where when we start going down a panic response, pain in the body increases exponentially just from the release of cortisol from the panic. So there are ways to like hack your body to just like reduce pain and the perception of pain. Not that it's not real, it's very real, but we can tell our mind a lot of different things about it.
I think that's a really cool explanation. Who would have thought the business aviation guy would become the scientist?
Yeah, I generally don't lean too much into science because people get bored by it. But I'm super interested in it. A quick story here. There is this guy that was told there was a refrigeration train truck that was left on. It was just continuously running. And his job was to go into the train car and fix the refrigerant system. He gets in there and the door shuts behind him and he gets locked in. And he is now in a refrigeration truck thinking he's going to freeze to death. Turns out the refrigeration truck was broken. He ended up dying of what he thought was hypothermia as he was journaling his last few hours. But when they did the autopsy, they realized his cortisol level, his panic state was through the roof. And he ended up thinking he was going to die of cold. And it wasn't even cold in there. It was 55 degrees, which is chilly, but wouldn't kill you when they finally found him. So wild how our brain can trick us into thinking that we're in an unsafe environment just because of the information that we've received around us. So we just have to be very, very cautious as we think about pain, how we think about our future.
That's a really good point. Where I'd like to go next with the conversation, I want to read something to you in relation to the brain. As mental disorders and mental challenges seem to be a really popular thing in our world right now. And Wim Hof actually said this, and he said, "We can shoot people to the moon, but we don't have solutions for mental disorders. We can master mathematics, languages, history, and how to make money, but not how to balance ourselves and become happy." That's ridiculous. All of us should be happy every day. We should be in control of our mood and our beautiful mind. You are the owner of your own mind. You got that? Your own happiness, strength, and health is yours. And obviously, there's a little bit of nuance in there. It's probably missing a little bit of context. However, integrating with presence, the breath, and exposure therapy, whether it be hot or cold, at the very least, gives us tools that have low risk, that are relatively available to most human beings, at least in the United States, pretty consistently. What are your thoughts on this and how mental health seems to be a really major challenge in our world, but we're not able to really tackle that problem? And it seems to me that cold therapy could be a great integration in that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about this often, coming from dealing with my own experience with depression and anxiety. At the end of the day, nobody's going to solve this for us. And as hard as it is, if we can dig deep enough to take responsibility, though it might be somebody else's fault that we're even in this position, that we're dealing with some mental health challenge, whether it's anxiety, depression, or whatever it might be, though there's influences from other people that have elevated that experience for you, if we can dig deep enough to just take responsibility, radical responsibility for ourselves, we can find healing in our minds and in our bodies through what I believe nature has already given us. Breath work, cold exposure, heat being sauna, nature in general. If we can get back to the practices that make us feel alive and that align us with our human abilities, I think we could solve our own mental health challenges because no one else is going to do it for us.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely have to do the work for sure. And it's interesting, like the mention of depression and anxiety, because I feel like those terms elicit an eyebrow raise when people hear them. But in reality, they're just sensations. Not all of life is going to be linearly happy all the time. We may have sleep deprivation. We may have pain. We may have stress from traffic, a fight with a significant other. Like, I think everybody is in pursuit of happiness. I think everybody's in pursuit of this joyful, loving life consistently. But it is inevitable that there are going to be outside influences and variables that move us to an anxious or depressive state. And I think having the tools available decreases the severity of the symptoms on either side of the spectrum because there's an outlet. There are tools that are available. And then doing what we're doing right now, which is elevating these things to the height of a conversation that allow people to realize that they're not alone. They don't need to shove these things down. The majority of our world is honestly wearing some sort of mask to hide these symptoms because they want to seem like they're fine and don't want to be judged. But in reality, part of the human experience is going through forms of anxiety, depression, and everything in between, and simply trying to do our best to, as you said, do the next right thing. And so having a tool like a cold plunge or an ice barrel, or even just understanding that other people go through this too, grants people the permission to simply be more vulnerable.
I love that. Yeah, I completely agree. I think setting our sights on living a meaningful life where we're potentially in the pursuit of peace over happiness will set us off to a good trajectory in all of this.
Yeah, that's great. I love the concept of a meaningful life because it elicits a thought process for me and why I love this podcast, why I love connecting with founders like yourself, which is I'd rather go through some of the subtle moments of suffering as opposed to experiencing the long-term form of regret. And I don't want to sit on a park bench at 75 years old with this song inside, knowing that I didn't share that song with the world. And I just love connecting with people like yourself, Wyatt, because you had the courage to take the leap. And starting off, you didn't have the roadmap. You didn't have people holding your hand. You probably didn't have the financing in the beginning. But you had the intrinsic belief to do something that is meaningful and is moving the needle in the right direction and is providing jobs and impact to people all over the United States and beyond. And so when I say some of those things and you think about a meaningful life, what comes to mind for you?
I A meaningful life for me definitely comes down to how I serve my family and my fellow men around me, men and women. I really think if I can do a good job as an example of a dad, as a husband, show what it looks like to take responsibility for who we are, where we are, and do a good job at serving my fellow man, I think I've lived a meaningful life. I don't want it to be this idea of like, I don't want life to be easier. I just want to get better. And the last thing I would say to that, I very much agree with the sentiment of treat yourself like somebody you're responsible for. You have to be good to yourself. You have to be patient with yourself. You have to extend grace to yourself. You can't love others well if you can't love yourself well. So do the hard work to get right with who you are, and then be a good example. Be a good husband. Right? Take care of your wife, serve your wife, your significant others, be a good dad, care for your kids, love them. You'll never regret spending time with your kid, right? So spend a lot of time with them. And then go do good in the world and for humanity. Make a difference, add some value. I think that's what it means for me to live a meaningful life.
I love that answer. And just to echo what you said, treat yourself like someone you are responsible for. I think those are really powerful words. And I mean, you've done that, man. And it's been really cool to see you and your team integrate Ice Barrel into the CrossFit space. I've connected with Eric Hinman, and he's a big fan of it. I've connected with Brooke Wells a little bit and seeing that she's a part of the Ice Barrel team now. And my good buddy, Evan Slaughter, Fit to Serve, my guy bringing positivity into the world through laughter. It's been really great to see the wide array of connections that you've made with this incredible tool. And as we wrap up today's conversation, you took things exactly where I wanted to go next, which is, life as a dad. And, the impact of you doing hard things, you overcoming adversity, you trying your best to build things and get things done, which is our motto here at ALLSMITH. And it's one of those things that, it's about, forging something, not just finding something, and kind of creating that path forward. And, your kids are doing that on their own journey as they're observing mom and dad, integrating something really cool into the world and going through this unique business pathway. What's it like for you knowing that you've got the little ones of kind of observing your every move?
It's made me feel so, in a good way, just self-conscious. Like I want to present myself in a very honest, transparent way, so that they can see, the hardships along with the joys and the wins. Like, I don't like the idea of like hiding the struggles, from the kids. Life is going to be mean to them, just like it's mean to all of us. So, showing them how you can suffer well in life with a smile on your face, I think is so important. But being a dad is my favorite thing. Like, it's so meaningful. It's so cool that you get to be entrusted with a soul to tend to for a short amount of time, and then they go out into the world and try and do something great as well. So, I love it. They've been with me from the beginning. They've helped package up barrels, and they've just been along the journey from the beginning.
So awesome to hear, man. What's next for Ice Barrel? What can we expect? We kind of hinted at it in our conversation, but I'd love for people to hear it here. What's kind of coming up as we conclude Q4 of 2023?
Yeah, so obviously I'm going to plug it again because I'm stoked about it. The app, October 22nd. And then after that, we have a couple other exciting products rolling out. We got the holidays coming up. But really, if I could drill down beyond all of that, what's next is a much larger expansion of cold therapy to make it more effective and accessible for you to practice it at home, and for you to do it with your friends as well. So really, the expansion of the community and the accessibility of cold therapy, that's what's coming next.
That's awesome, man. I love being able to spitball with you and chat with you. And thank you so much for doing this, man, and kind of connecting with me and sharing some of the behind the scenes of some of the amazing things you're doing with cold therapy and your company, Ice Barrel. Where can people find you?
So yeah, icebarrel.com. I also love just to send people to our Instagram, which is just icebarrel on Instagram. You can see so many amazing photos and experiences from the community.
That's great, man. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to crossing paths with you soon. It was awesome being able to connect with you out at the Ultimate Hawaiian Trail Run there in Kauai. And I look forward to seeing you again soon and talking all things ice bath. For those of you observing today and taking part in our very first ALLSMITH Project podcast, we're thankful to spend some time with you guys. And remember, greatness is forged, not found. Until next time, guys.